delays from Garfield to Roosevelt. It's a 30-minute trip from 95th to downtown. Outbound 14 minutes. I-57 looks fine. The Bishop Ford Freeway as well. Eastbound Eden Spur, traffic is tight. Waukegan Road to the Edens. Inbound Kennedy, delays start at Canfield. 29 minutes, O'Hare to downtown. 17 from Montrose, 10 on the Express. Outbound 23 minutes to O'Hare. On Eisenhower, the drive time is 45 minutes from 390 to downtown. Outbound 34. Stevenson, 32 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Northbound tri-state delays are from the Reagan Tollway to North Avenue. That's traffic. I'm Jim Pelamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. In our AM 560 Weather Center, our meteorologist Steve Williams.
Nice warm day, lots of sun. High today 80, partly cloudy for tonight and a low 59. Partly sunny for tomorrow and Friday. It'll be warm both days. High tomorrow 79, Friday's high at 81. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
Currently 61 degrees. Next News 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy and Joe Biden. He's not going to answer questions he doesn't want to answer. Well, we'll see how well that serves him on Tuesday in the first debate between President Trump and Vice President Biden. Yesterday, Joe Biden was being interviewed by a local reporter up in Wisconsin, WBAY2.
CBS affiliate there.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting. Yes, I applied, waiting to hear back.
Asked the court packing question. Why is he asked the court packing question? Because so many of the temper tantrum set within his party have been saying if the Republicans move forward with filling the Ruth Bader Ginsburg vacancy, confirming a justice, that we're going to pack the court if Joe Biden is elected. Case in point, Don Lemon of the Fredo and Lemon buddy cop tandem at CNN.
We're going to have to blow up the entire system. And you know what we're going to have to do?
No, I don't know.
You know what we're going to? Yes, yeah. What you have to do?
You just got to vote.
Honestly, from what your closing argument is, you're going to have to get rid of the Electoral College. Because the people...
I don't see it.
Because the minority in this country decides who the judges are and they decide who the president is.
But you need a constitutional amendment to do that.
And if Joe Biden wins, Democrats can stack the courts and they can do that amendment and they can get it passed.
And others more hefty than Don Lemon have suggested the same. Joe Biden, to that question?
Let me tell you why I'm not going to answer that question. Because it will shift all the focus. That's what he wants. He never wants to talk about the issue at hand. He always tries to change the subject. But let's say I answer that question. Then the whole debate's going to be, well, Biden said or didn't say. Biden said he would or wouldn't. That's going to, the discussion should be about why he is moving in a direction that's totally inconsistent with what the founders wanted. They're designed, the Constitution says designed, the voters get to pick the president who gets to make the pick and the Senate who gets to decide. We're in the middle of an election right now, Brittany. You know, people are voting now. By the time this Supreme Court hearing would be held, if they hold one, would in fact, we'd probably, it's estimated 30 to 40% of the American people already have voted. It is a fundamental breach of constitutional principle.
That is just utter silliness, unsurprisingly. But just so we can establish a baseline here, Supreme Court vacancies have occurred in an election year in which a president has moved to fill the vacancy 25 times, 24 times. I mean, this is not unprecedented in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we just had one happen in an election year 4 years ago in 2016 with the passing of Antonin Scalia and the effort by President Obama to fill that vacancy, blocked by the Senate, divided government. That's the difference. Divided government versus Senate and a executive branch controlled by the same party. It's constitutional principles. What is he talking about? The thing, the Constitution. Yeah, that's Joe Biden's constitutional law knowledge. And we'll get to this day in Joe Biden history, which actually was yesterday. But in terms of remember his very stylistic recollection of his academic record, including at law school. Yeah, we'll get to that. But the other piece of it is the idea that he's going to be able to avoid answering questions that are being prompted by those within his party. Well, not if Chris Wallace is doing his job on Tuesday night. He won't be able to avoid them. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by David Rivkin, who served at the Justice Department and the White House counsel's office in both Bush Sr. and W's administrations. He is a adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute, and he has a practice that operates in both at the appellate level and both constitutional law in Washington, D.C. David Rivkin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you. A small correction. I served in the Reagan and Bush 41 administration.
Sorry.
W, but
Reagan and Bush.
Doesn't matter that much.
Thank you. Well, no, you got a Reagan credential. That matters. We can't overlook that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And so with respect to Joe Biden, I think you've reiterated essentially that point in the piece, but just the whole idea that this is somehow so out of bounds to even consider moving a replacement to Ruth Bader Ginsburg upon her untimely passing.
Agree absolutely. You mentioned numerous instances where vacancies were filled, both nomination-wise and confirmation-wise during the election year. In the opening paragraph of my Wall Street Journal piece from Monday, we mentioned at that point in time, Judge Breyer, who became subsequently Justice Breyer, he was nominated and confirmed, nominated by President Carter after he lost the elections. My other favorite example, which I don't mention in the piece in terms of a proximity to the elections, President Eisenhower put Brennan, subsequently Justice Brennan, in the court. You know how close it was to the elections? October 15. And it was done, there's no doubt about it, for largely political purposes, because Eisenhower's advisors believed that it would help to firm up the Catholic vote in the Northeast. So, get me out of here. This is ridiculous. There's no principle that's being violated here. But let me tell you more why this is so imperative. Look, we're approaching tremendously contentious elections where litigation is going to unfold, already unfolding, that would make Bush versus Gore look like walk in the sunshine. With all the efforts to stretch out the vote ballot counting. So the last thing we think we need, I think, as a country, is to have a Supreme Court that's not up to full strength, because you're going to have litigation over elector slate certifications in multiple circuits. They may come out, not may, I would stick my neck out and say they're likely to come out with different answers on the same legal issues. If we have an eight-justice Supreme Court and we have a 4-4 decision, it will be tremendously destructive, especially at a time where all of our other institutions are already so distrusted. We need – now, I'm not saying that 8 justices would not get you to 5-3, but they might not. 9 justices cannot get you to a tie. So that's what makes the a vote on President Trump's nominee not only constitutionally proper, but constitutionally essential.
Well, and also Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed with you in 2016, when not specific to an election, but just generally speaking, when she said, in a contentious body where there are often disagreements, 4-4 is an unstable situation.
Absolutely, always unstable, but particularly now, and I want to emphasize for your listeners, there have been over 100 lawsuits. Nothing less than a full litigation Armageddon brought without exception by Democrats in over a dozen states, trying to fundamentally change the law that applies to mail-in ballots. And the idea is to have a plan B. If we do not do well on November 3rd, is to stretch out the ballot counting and litigation over signatures to the point that would actually disable the Electoral College, or at least would allow them to argue with the Electoral College vote that has to happen on December 14, and they elect the slates to be in a safe harbor situation. They have to be done by December.
To the president, would you say he makes a nomination announcement on Saturday? let's move forward. Have confirmation hearings, don't have confirmations. Have McConnell just call the vote and the Republican Party vote its shares, or would you go through a formal hearing process, and what would that look like if you would argue for green lighting it?
Yeah, I'm a constitutional lawyer. I'm not an expert in legislative matters, truth be told. I will defer to Senator McConnell. I think that the Senate Republican Majority Leader would know how to get it done. But since you asked me, and I cannot resist myself being a litigator and answering questions, I would try to get it done before the election year. But now, there could be, look, the Constitution does not require any hearings, does not even require a committee vote. There are, I'm sure, Senate procedures in place. But I think that what the Republicans should try to do in the Senate is cut a deal with Democrats to ensure that there were no dilatory tactics and that everything is set up. They're not going to ask for delays because the minority in the Senate, unlike in the House, can get substantial delays. Unless that agreement is secured, I at least would suggest proceeding because, look, the Republicans are going to be criticized no matter how they slice it, even if they acted with utmost decorum. So I think the goal is to get it done. And by the way, the business about packing the court, again, as a constitutional lawyer, I can tell you, the Constitution provides for a Chief Justice. The Constitution does not set the numbers for justices and associate justices in the Supreme Court. But given the 100-plus year precedent, if the smarter Democrats think about it, they would have packed the court. If we could get it done, which required them controlling the White House, controlling the Senate, abolishing filibuster, that would, I remember the term from the Vietnam War era, we had to destroy the village to save it. That would tremendously delegitimize the one institution that still enjoys considerable public approval, because it would be impossible to reconcile the notion that the court is neutral and not a partisan political institution. So I think, A, the threats to PAC were made before this battle has been joined over Ginsburg's successor. B, I do not think it's by any way a slam dunk, even if Democrats control all sinews of power in Washington. It would be tremendously delegitimizing, and Supreme Court needs legitimacy for its orders to be obeyed fully.
And the histrionics around the so-called Biden rule, since we're talking about Joe Biden, the Biden rule that oft invoked until it really is no longer controlling, if you will, because of what they chose to do in 2016, Joe Biden included.
Well, it's not even that. The fundamental fundamental argument I make is very simple. Look, the institutions of our government are supposed to be fully effective until the last day in office. That's true of the House, that's true of the Senate, that's true of the President. That is what democracy actually means. They don't expire 30, 50, 60, 100 days in advance. Point number one. Point number two, the reason you had past instances where sometimes, like Merrick Garland nomination, is not, I don't even like to put it in terms of same party controlling both the Senate and the White House. Let me put it in a slightly more exalted way. If there's a fundamental disagreement about the judicial philosophy of suitable Supreme Court candidates between the President and the Senate, you do not proceed because you can. That the framers divided the power to make appointments in the court between the Senate and the President. In a situation where there's full unity on this issue, there's absolutely no reason to wait. So it is the question of even if you take off the table the coming litigation problems and legitimacy issues in elections, there's absolutely no reason to say there's some magic date that if it's by May of the election year you can proceed, but if it's in September you cannot. They're just silly, and history does not support it.
Well, and you're also talking to a party that's headed in the Senate by Chuck Schumer, who said yesterday that the Republicans have now stolen 2 Supreme Court seats. Stolen. I don't know how you steal it. It would seem to occur in the full light of day with the vacancies, nominees, and then a confirmation process, but not according to Chuck Schumer.
No, look, the bottom line, as you well know, in the mind, unfortunately, regrettably, of some people, Trump is not a legitimate president. He was not legitimately elected in 2016. Hillary should have been elected. Therefore, ipso facto, whatever Trump does is illegitimate. So, Kavanaugh was not legitimate. Gorsuch was not legitimate. And whoever is going to replace late Justice Ginsburg is illegitimate. So it's not a question of a timing. It's a question of a fundamental denial, which, by the way, is terrible. In a democracy, the sine qua non of democracy is the willingness by the losing side in any particular election to accept the legitimacy of a democratic outcome. And by the way, one final thing about Don Lemon, again, the notion that you're going to get a constitutional amendment through that would abolish electoral college is risible no matter who wins in November. And the notion that the electoral college is somehow disfranchising is absurd. If we had an hour, we can talk about why the framers did it for good and sufficient reasons, why it remains necessary to sort of overall constitutional architecture that we have, because we are a federal republic. We're not an Athenian-style democracy where everybody piles into the city square and votes. There is significant constitutional reality to states, which is why we have blue states and red states. So this whole thing is silly at the best and very destructive at worst.
Maybe Don Lemon will have you on the show to talk about it, but you're going to have to talk very slowly. Just you're forewarned. David Rivkin served at the Justice Department and the White House counsel's office, both the Reagan and Bush administrations. That's H.W. Bush. David Rivkin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. And we have some breaking news. Gail Sayers has passed away at the age of 77. I had the honor of
that's too bad.
Playing, we'll tell the story later. But, yeah. By the way, David joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer